The moment Shedeur Sanders delivered under pressure, with the calm precision and control of a seasoned quarterback, the silence from Kevin Stefanski spoke volumes. While fans and analysts alike praised Sanders' poise, the man in charge avoided acknowledgement. Not even a basic admission that Sanders should have started earlier. That deliberate silence became its own controversy, suggesting not just oversight, but denial. When a leader won't validate performance out of fear of admitting fault, that silence can be louder than any press conference. And that silence has consequences. When leaders dodge accountability, trust erodes, not just between coach and quarterback, but throughout the locker room. Sanders proved with his preparation and leadership that he was ready. And yet the Browns missed out on valuable momentum because Stefanski waited too long.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Every team watches how its leaders respond to being wrong. And in this case, the response only deepened the damage. Kevin Stefanski is in full-blown damage control mode. And it's not just because the Cleveland Browns are dealing with another rocky quarterback situation. This time, it's personal. Experts, analysts, and fans alike are demanding answers, not about X's and O's, but about why Stefanski refused to start Shedeur Sanders when every sign pointed to him being the best option. The pressure isn't just about football. It's about accountability, leadership, and a coach who's being accused of sabotaging a player because of ego. Let's be real. This wasn't a minor misstep. This wasn't about slow player development or giving a rookie time to adjust. Shedeur Sanders was ready, fully prepared, focused, professional. His leadership, work ethic, and performance in practices and team meetings were consistent. Players noticed. Analysts noticed. The only person who didn't or wouldn't seemed to be Stefanski. And when Sanders finally did get his chance, it wasn't some lucky break or fluke performance. It was validation. He played with confidence, command, and clarity. His performance was undeniable, which made Stefanski's earlier refusal to start him even more glaring and more frustrating. The worst part? Stefanski never addressed it, never acknowledged the mistake, never gave credit where credit was due. In fact, his refusal to even mention Sanders by name in interviews didn't go unnoticed. That's not leadership, that's avoidance. And in the NFL, where leadership is scrutinized just as much as strategy, that kind of silence says a lot. This whole situation exposed a problem bigger than one bad decision. It revealed a coach whose reluctance to admit error damaged trust inside his own locker room. Coaches talk all the time about accountability, about the next man up, about giving guys a shot when they earn it. But when push came to shove, Stefanski didn't follow his own standard. Instead of recognizing Sanders' readiness, he stuck with less effective options. Week after week, despite mounting evidence, despite the growing calls for change. And when the moment finally came, when Sanders finally took the field and outperformed expectations, there was no humility, no self-reflection, just more silence. That kind of ego-driven leadership doesn't just slow progress. It actively hurts team culture. Players begin to question decisions. Morale dips. And worst of all, it sends a message. It's not about who's best. It's about who fits the coach's narrative. That message? It's toxic. What Stefanski doesn't seem to realize is that acknowledging a mistake doesn't make you weak. It makes you trustworthy. A coach who can say, "I got this wrong," is a coach players will follow. Because that kind of honesty builds a culture of respect. That's how you build a winning franchise. But Stefanski chose pride over progress. He had the answer in the building. He had a quarterback who prepared like a pro, led with maturity, and showed flashes of brilliance before even stepping on the field in a game. Shedeur Sanders had done everything right. And yet he was sidelined. The timing couldn't have been worse. The Browns were in desperate need of offensive rhythm. The chemistry was off. The play calling looked stale. The locker room needed a spark. Sanders could have been that spark weeks earlier. But Stefanski's unwillingness to pivot, to rethink his own plan, left that fire burning out on the bench. Now with Sanders performing and proving he was ready all along, The questions are unavoidable. Why did it take so long? Why wasn't this talent recognized earlier? And most importantly, why won't Stefanski take responsibility? Analysts have started calling it what it is: sabotage. Not in a dramatic sense, but in the sense of willfully ignoring the best option out of fear of admitting a prior mistake. That kind of decision-making doesn't just come from uncertainty. It comes from ego. And in professional sports, ego kills growth. Ego damages relationships. Ego makes it impossible for young talent to thrive. This isn't just about a quarterback being overlooked. It's about the culture being built or broken by those in charge. Stefanski's handling of Sanders didn't just delay the team's offensive development. It delayed trust. It cost them opportunities. And it fractured the dynamic between coaching staff and players. When a coach refuses to acknowledge an error, especially one this visible, it affects everything. Players stop believing that merit matters. Veterans start questioning decisions. Young players wonder if their hard work will even be noticed. That kind of uncertainty spreads fast. And once it takes root, it's hard to reverse. Shedeur Sanders showed every sign of readiness. His commitment, his intelligence, his command of the playbook, everything pointed to a player who had earned a legitimate shot. The fact that he had to wait so long, that falls squarely on the coaching staff. And the refusal to admit it, that's all Stefanski. It's not about punishment. It's not about scapegoating. It's about accountability. And Stefanski, at least so far, hasn't shown any. Experts aren't calling for blood. They're calling for honesty. A simple acknowledgement that the coaching staff didn't get it right the first time. That would go a long way. It would show the locker room that leadership is watching, learning, and willing to grow. But instead, Stefanski's acted like nothing happened. And that silence? That's damaging. A coach's job isn't just to make decisions, it's to own them. Especially when they affect the entire trajectory of the season. Sanders deserved more than a delayed opportunity. He deserved respect. And the longer Stefanski avoids addressing it, the more it reflects poorly on his leadership. This whole situation could have been a moment of growth. It could have been a lesson in self-correction, in transparency, in putting the team first. Instead, it's become a cautionary tale. You don't build a winning team by pretending things are fine when they're not. You don't inspire trust by deflecting blame or staying silent. And you definitely don't lead by ignoring the very talent that's lifting your team. The Browns are now faced with two truths. 1. They have a young quarterback who's proving he can lead. 2. They have a coach who's been unwilling to admit he held that quarterback back. Leadership matters. And the decisions made off the field often matter just as much as what happens on it. Shedeur Sanders has earned the spotlight. He's earned the right to be recognized, respected, and fully backed by the coaching staff. Anything less than that isn't just unfair, it's organizational failure. And Kevin Stefanski? He's running out of time to fix it. The longer he waits to acknowledge the mistake, the more this becomes his legacy. Not the wins, not the playoff appearances, but the time he let pride get in the way of progress. Let us know what you think. Did Stefanski sabotage Shedeur Sanders' rise? Or is this just another case of stubborn coaching gone too far? Drop your take in the comments. Hit like if you believe leadership starts with accountability. And if you're not already subscribed, now's the time, because the drama behind the plays is just getting started. There's a reason this moment has hit such a nerve. What Kevin Stefanski did, or more accurately what he didn't do, is striking a chord not just with analysts and fans, but with players past and present. Because this isn't just a mishandled quarterback situation. This is a textbook example of how fragile trust becomes when leadership refuses to admit fault. It's easy to look at a game, dissect play calling, criticize clock management. That's standard. But when a coach actively resists the most logical move in front of him, when he lets weeks slip by without starting a player who every indicator said was ready, that's not just questionable judgment. That's personal pride dictating professional decisions. And that's exactly what happened with Shedeur. He walked into Cleveland with everything you'd want from a young QB. Discipline, intelligence, coachability, and an obvious hunger to earn his shot. He didn't coast on his name. He didn't expect favoritism. He put in the work. The tape shows it. The teammates vouched for it. The results, when he finally got on the field, confirmed it. But still, Stefanski waited. Now, delayed recognition in sports is nothing new. Some players fly under the radar. Others bloom late. But that wasn't the case here. Sanders didn't have to prove he was capable. He already had. And not only in private workouts or practice drills. The signs were there in his command of the offense, his composure in team settings, and his leadership in the locker room. This wasn't a gamble. This was a coach refusing to cash in on a sure thing because it would mean acknowledging he missed it the first time around. The damage isn't just in what was lost, it's in why it was lost. By sticking to a decision that was clearly failing, Stefanski didn't just waste games. He undermined the basic fabric of his team. He showed every single player in that building that doing everything right might not matter if a coach doesn't want to be proven wrong. Think about that. What message does that send to your young guys trying to climb the depth chart? To your rookies grinding every day in the hopes of being noticed? To your veterans who just want to win and don't care who the hero is? It tells them this isn't a meritocracy. It tells them that decisions might not be based on performance, but on pride. And that's the kind of message that turns a motivated locker room into a divided one. The worst part? This all could have been avoided. All Stefanski had to do was adjust. Admit he got it wrong, start Sanders earlier, and frame it as a learning moment. That's what real leaders do. They don't hide from mistakes, they own them. They use them to build credibility. Because credibility isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest. But instead, we got silence. A carefully controlled narrative. A refusal to say Sanders' name with the respect he earned. That silence said everything. It said Stefanski was more worried about protecting his reputation than developing his team. More interested in maintaining his version of control than actually putting the best talent on the field. And now, with Sanders performing and the calls for accountability growing louder, Stefanski is boxed into a corner of his own making. Every success Sanders has now only highlights how wrong the earlier decision was. Every strong quarter, every clutch play, every touchdown throw, it all comes with the unspoken question, why wasn't he starting earlier? And to be clear, this isn't about hindsight. This isn't a, well, now that he's good, we can criticize. No. This is about ignoring clear signs in real time. This is about a player showing up day after day, ready to contribute, only to be held back by something that had nothing to do with football. Because if it were just about football, Sanders would have been out there from the start. This is where ego becomes dangerous. Not just stubborn, dangerous. Ego makes leaders defensive. It makes them double down. It makes them treat criticism like betrayal. But most of all, it makes them miss opportunities that are right in front of them, because admitting a mistake feels worse than losing a game. And when ego runs a locker room, you're in trouble. What Stefanski missed wasn't just a chance to turn the season around earlier. It was a chance to model accountability, to show his players that growth is possible, even for the guy calling the plays. That even the head coach is still learning. That kind of humility builds real loyalty. Players will run through a wall for a coach who admits he's human. But they'll tune out a coach who pretends he's always right. Now, Stefanski's silence is costing him. The experts are talking. The fans are fuming. And inside that locker room, there are players who now know without question that results alone won't always get you on the field. That's a tough pill to swallow. Meanwhile, Sanders? He's doing everything right. Still, he hasn't thrown shade. He hasn't publicly criticized the coaching staff. He hasn't gotten cocky or combative. He's just playing ball, and playing it well. He's the grown-up in the room, leading with performance and maturity. And that makes the situation even more glaring. Because if Stefanski had owned up, if he had come forward and said, we didn't see it early enough, but we do now, the whole tone would be different. The conversation would shift to redemption, to how a coach and a QB grew into a rhythm together. But now, it's just about the mistake, and the refusal to acknowledge it. This moment could have been a rallying point for the Browns. A mid-season reset. A bold leadership moment. Instead, it's a warning sign. One that says, this coach values being right over doing right. And that's not sustainable. A team can only take so much of that. Eventually, trust wears thin. And when the next decision comes down, when the next player is being evaluated, when the next adjustment needs to be made, everyone's going to remember this moment. Everyone's going to wonder, is this decision about football or about pride? Because when leadership chooses pride once, it becomes easier to choose it again. That's why the calls for accountability matter. That's why the experts are demanding more than a quiet lineup change. They want words. They want clarity. They want a public acknowledgement that the team's best option was sitting for weeks, while losses piled up and chemistry deteriorated. And frankly, they're not wrong to ask. Leadership isn't just about moving chess pieces. It's about owning every move, even the bad ones. Especially the bad ones. And if Stefanski can't do that, then maybe the conversation needs to shift from quarterbacks to coaching futures. This isn't about punishing Stefanski. It's about protecting a team from the kind of leadership that pretends nothing ever goes wrong. It's about restoring credibility, rebuilding trust, and making sure that when players give their all, they know it will be seen. Because right now, Shedeur Sanders gave his all and was invisible to the one person whose job was to see it first. So here we are. Sanders is rising. The team is finding new energy. But the questions haven't gone away. They've only gotten louder. Is Kevin Stefanski going to own his mistake? Or is he going to ride out the season pretending the delay didn't happen? And if you think the drama ends here, think again. Because what we're watching unfold in Cleveland isn't just one coaching misstep. It's a leadership breakdown that's now bleeding into every part of the organization. Kevin Stefanski's refusal to admit he mishandled Shedeur Sanders' readiness isn't an isolated incident. It's setting a precedent. One that says loud and clear, status and pride matter more than performance. You can feel the tension now, even on the sidelines. Players walking a little more cautiously. Media asking more pointed questions. Analysts not holding back anymore. What used to be whispers about Stefanski's decision-making are now front and center on national. The excuses? They're gone. The timeline? It's too obvious. Sanders didn't just look better. He looked like the quarterback the team needed all along. And everyone knows it. Except, apparently, Kevin Stefanski. There's something deeply frustrating about watching a young player rise through adversity, while the coach responsible for sidelining him won't even offer a basic acknowledgement. It's not just tone-deaf, it's disrespectful. Sanders didn't wait for someone to hand him the keys. He earned it. He proved it. He outworked the system that tried to ignore him. And instead of receiving the recognition that should naturally follow that kind of breakthrough, he's getting silence from the very man who should be championing his success. Leadership isn't about always getting it right. It's about being real when you don't. It's about looking at your team and saying, yeah, I missed this one. That's on me. The best leaders don't hide from their mistakes. They turn them into turning points. And let's be honest, this could have been one. Stefanski had a golden opportunity to reshape the narrative, to step in front of the cameras and say, we misread the situation, but we're thrilled with where Sanders is now. Done. Easy. Respect regained. But nope. He chose silence. He chose pride. And now it's not just the experts demanding an apology, it's the fans. It's the people who pour their hearts and money into this team year after year. People who've seen this movie before. They know what happens when a coach lets his ego drive the car. The team crashes. And it's the players who have to pick up the pieces. Let's talk about what's really on the line here. This isn't just about who takes snaps under center. It's about whether this team believes in its leadership. Because once that belief is gone, it's really gone. And right now, you can sense it slipping. Not in dramatic outbursts or on-the-record criticisms, but in the quiet eye rolls, the short answers in interviews, the forced smiles on the bench. That's how it starts. And what happens if Stefanski continues this pattern? What happens next time a young player is ready and he hesitates? What happens the next time the team needs a bold move, and instead they get delay, denial, and damage control? This isn't just a quarterback issue, it's a trust issue. It's a culture issue. It's about whether this franchise is serious about growth or just committed to protecting reputations. Because when leadership chooses image over accountability, the locker room notices. And more importantly, they remember. They remember when a teammate wasn't given a chance. They remember when no one said, "My bad." They remember who backed the players and who backed their own pride. These moments build up. They create a version of team history that never leaves. And if you let too many of those pile up, you lose the locker room. Not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, quietly, completely. And then the whole thing starts to rot from the inside out. That's why this matters. That's why this isn't just another quarterback controversy or coach's choice story. This is a franchise-defining moment. Either Stefanski finds the humility to own his mistake, or this becomes the blueprint for how not to handle talent, how not to lead, how not to build trust in a locker room full of professionals who deserve better. And don't get it twisted, this is still fixable. But the window's closing. A simple acknowledgement, even now, would go a long way. Not just for Sanders, but for the entire team. It would show that the head coach is capable of growth, that he sees what's happening, that he values results over pride. That's all it takes. But every day that goes by without that moment, the hole gets deeper. The questions get harder. And the excuses start sounding even thinner. Sanders has held up his end of the deal. He stayed ready. He performed. He led. Now it's time for Stefanski to do the same. And if he doesn't, the spotlight will stay right where it is, on the silence, on the pride, on the refusal to do what every great leader eventually learns how to do. Say the words, "I was wrong." Let us know what you think. Should Stefanski finally address this? Or is the silence speaking volumes already? Drop a comment, hit like if you think Shedeur deserved better from the start, and subscribe for more deep dives into the drama that proves football is never just football.